Been a long time since I've been in front of a camera making YouTube videos. I think the last video I uploaded was back in 2022, so close to a 3-year break, and there are many reasons for that. One, when I first started YouTube, it was around photography, but I liked photography as a hobby and never really had too much to share around photography because that's not where my key strength lies. My key strength lies around software and creating software, writing code and all those things. So the second half of my YouTube journey, if you want to call it that, is basically going to revolve around software creation, writing code, doing lead code problems, and sharing my knowledge that I have as a software developer in the industry for the past 2 years. And I think it's going to be really interesting. I have some cool ideas that I want to try out, make videos around. So yeah, it will be fun, interesting, and let's see where it goes. In this particular video, what we are going to do is, you may have heard of the CRUD operations if you are into software development. CRUD is basically create, read, update, delete, and these are the key characteristics or key features that are there in a database system, and we're going to implement the same functionality using GoLang. We are going to expose it as a REST API, but we are not going to be connecting to a database. If you want to see a video where we connect to a database and do the same operations, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video around it. In this video, we are basically going to use a hash map, which kind of is a key value pair, so it kind of acts as a database, and we're going to implement the CRUD operations on top of the hash map. So it's going to be interesting. Now let's go over to the laptop to see how to implement this. In order to follow along for this tutorial, you're going to need to have Go installed on your machine. I'll leave the link to the documentation in the description below so you can follow that to install Go on your machine. Once you have Go installed on your machine, go ahead and open up a terminal of your liking and navigate to a folder where you want to save this particular application that we're going to be creating. Over here, I've opened up my terminal and we are going to type in the following command: mkdir crud and cd crud and code. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a directory called as CRUD. We are going to navigate into that directory and open that directory up in Visual Studio Code. You don't need to use Visual Studio Code. You can use any text editor of your liking, but I like Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to be using that. And it will go ahead and open up the particular directory in Visual Studio Code. Now the next thing you want to do over here is go ahead and open up the terminal within Visual Studio Code. We could have done this in the previous step, but I prefer to do it within Visual Studio Code. And over here, the first command we're going to type is go mod init and call it as CRUD. So it's basically going to create the Go application, and the name of that is going to be CRUD. And as you can see, it goes ahead and creates the go.mod file, which is where all our dependencies that we're using for the application is going to reside. Now the next thing we're going to do is, in order to build a REST API, I'm going to make use of something called as Gin, which is a popular framework for building REST API in Go. I'll go ahead and leave the link to this documentation as well on the description, so you can follow along or read for your understanding in the future. Over here, we are going to copy the first command. Now, if you're thinking why I'm doing this and not this, because this copy to clipboard also copies the $sign, and sometimes I forget to remove it, which is annoying. And I could run it again, but just to save time, I'm just going to copy that and go ahead and paste it. And this is going to install all the related dependencies that Gin needs. And now if we take a look at our Go mod file, we are going to see all the dependencies from Gin being installed in our go.mod file. It also created a go.sum file, which is good, no issues over there. So I'm just going to clear this output, and the next thing I'm going to do is called as touch main.go. This will create the main Go file for us, where our application logic is going to stay. Over here, what we're going to do is first define the package, which is main, and then we are going to import a few packages. The first package is obviously going to be the Gin package that we just installed. After that, we're also going to do the net/http, which we can use for sending status request for our endpoints. After this, we'll add one more endpoint, but we'll get to that later. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our main function. So we are going to type func main, and this is our main function where majority of our code is going to reside. The first thing we'll do is we'll create a variable called as R, which is going to be used for our Gin application. So over here we just do R colon equal to, and then do Gin dot default. After that we'll just do R dot run on the bottom, just so if we forget to do this, our application is not going to run, so we'll just get it out of the way immediately. Now let's go ahead and create a simple endpoint to ensure our API is working. So what we're going to do is we're going to type r.get, and then we are just going to put a double quote \, and the get operation takes two parameters. So first one is the path for our endpoint, which is just a \. The second one is a handler, which is a function, and this function takes a Gin context, which it automatically auto completes for us, which is good. Now within this function, all we are going to do is just type ctx.json http.success status is going to be okay, which is basically a 200, which means a positive response is being sent. And then we're just going to type gin.h, and over here is where our message is going to be. So your left thing can be anything. I'm just going to put it as message, and same for the right. I'm just going to put it as working for now. And we'll go ahead and save this, and in the terminal we'll just go ahead and run the application using the main.go command. And as you can see on the bottom, it's running on port 8080. I'm going to be using Postman to test the application to ensure it's working. So I have the Postman extension installed, which you can also install. It's really helpful. And you just click on new HTTP request, and over here all we do is just type HTTP // localhost 8080. And when we hit send, we're going to get a success of 200, which is from that http.success okay, and the message that we sent back in our response over here. Now to the next step. What we're going to do is we're going to create two structs. So one is for digging and updating of values, and the other one is for getting values. So on the top, what we're going to do is we're just going to type in type. We'll call it a set params, and then it will be a struct. And over here we'll have a key, which will be a string, and then we put JSON, and then put it as key. And then the next will be a value, which will again be a string, JSON. This will again be value. So that will be our first one. Actually, let's go ahead and make this lowercase instead of uppercase. Oops. If I can type properly. And the next one will again be type. We'll call this as get params. It will be a struct. And then over here we'll just have one value, which is a key. Again, it will be a string. And then over here we'll put it in the form and put it as key. So over here for the set params, we'll mostly be using a post request, so we'll be sending it part of the body. For the get params, we'll be sending it part of the request parameters itself, or query parameters as it's called. So that's why we are using form over here. Now that we have these two in place, what we're going to do is within the main function, we are going to create like a global variable that we can use across all our endpoints. And this, as I mentioned, this is going to be a hash map. So in Go, in order to create a hash map, you can just define it as a variable using the var keyword, and then I'm just going to call it as a db map, and this is going to be equal to, we are going to use the make functionality to make our map, and then it will just be of type string. we are going to make it extremely simple, no complexity or anything. So that's it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create our first endpoint, which is the add endpoint, to add values into our database, or in our case our hash map. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the r.post functionality in order to do that. And our endpoint is going to be \add. You can name it anything. I just put it as add because it's easy to type out. And this will again take the same function that we kind of made up above. So over here, what we're going to do is first we have to define our params that we're going to get from the request body. So we'll just do var params, and then we'll call it as the set params that we defined above over here, which is the key and then the value. So after we do this, what we can do is we have to check whether our key value pairs are present or not, and we have to bind it into the request that we are getting. So for that, we are going to get an error response. We may get an error response if it's not there or not present. So that's why we are defining this if error. What we're going to do is we're going to use the ctx to bind our JSON. As I mentioned, we are sending it part of the request body, so that's why we are doing bind JSON. Then we just pass in the params over here, and then we're just going to check if error is not equal to null, or null in Go is basically equivalent to null. So in our case, if there is an error, what we're going to be doing is just calling ctx.json. Then we'll do the http dot let's see, status bad request, which will be a 404, I believe. And then we'll just do the gen.h, and then we'll do message, and we'll just pass in the message over here. So we can just pass in error.error, and we have to put a comma, so that will take care of our error. Now to add the values, all we are going to do is call dbmap. We'll do params.key is equal to params.value. So what we're doing over here is within our database map or database, the key is going to be the key that we are passing, and the corresponding value is going to be the value that we are assigning. And this is how we do the assignment in Go. After this, what we can do is we can build out a success message using fmt package to kind of format it. So on the top in our import, we're just going to import fmt as well, and then we'll just do fmt.sprintf, and then we can type something like saved key, then do a %s, and then do params.key. This is just to kind of let the users know that we have saved the values, saved the following value. Actually, let's rename this. Let's put it as succmsg. You can name it anything you want. And then after that, we again have to go ahead and send a response. So we are just going to do the same thing. http.status. Okay. Then we're going to do a gen.h, and then type in message is equal to our success message. So this is going to be regarding the adding values to our database. Let's go ahead and create our update endpoint. Our update endpoint is going to be the same as our add endpoint. The only change we're going to make is going to be related to the message that we are sending back. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and copy the entire add endpoint, just paste it down below, and instead of add, we can just call update. Everything else is going to remain the same. What we can do is we can create a new variable called as old value, and we can get the value from our database map. So we can do dbmap param.key, and we'll get the value saved into our old value object that will be passing again in the response. So over here we can do we can change this message a bit to say something like value for %s. We are going to pass the key over there, has been updated from %s to %s. Now it's taking 3 parameters, as you can see. So the first one is going to be the key that we get, then we are going to do the old value, and then we are going to do param.value. So we might get something like value for name has been changed from Sri to Srivat's or something like that. That is our update endpoint. Really simple, similar to the add endpoint, but only difference is around the update message that we want to send back. So the next thing we can do is we can go ahead and create our delete endpoint. Our delete endpoint is again going to be a post endpoint. So we can go ahead and copy our update endpoint. And over here, what we are going to do is we'll first change the endpoint to be delete. And instead of the set params, we are going to be making use of the get params. Because what we do in a delete operation is we pass in the key and we delete that key from our database. So in our case, it's going to be the get params. We are again going to be sending it through the request body. And over here, what we are going to do, we'll delete, we'll keep the success message, we'll delete the others. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the delete functionality that Go has. It takes in 2 parameters. So the first parameter is the map. So we're going to pass in the DB map, and then we're going to pass in the key that we want to delete. And after the delete is successful, we can modify our message to be something like deleted %s, which is going to be the param.key. So we have deleted that particular key from our database. And now the last endpoint is going to be our get endpoint, which is going to return the value from our database. So for this, it's going to be relatively simple. We'll just do r.get, we'll do \get. Again, it's going to take in the function. And over here, we can basically copy the same parameter that we had for our delete functionality. We can also copy the error logic, but in this case, instead of a bind JSON, we are going to do a bind query, because as I mentioned, we're going to pass it in the query parameter. So all of this will be the same. Now we are going to build out the response object. So over here, what we are going to do, we'll call something like db key, which will basically be the params.key, and in the db value will basically be db map, and then we pass the params.key. You could either do that, or you can just do the db key, because we have already assigned the value over here. And then we can build out our success message as follows using fmt.sprintf, and then we can say something along the lines like value for %s, which will be the key, is again %s, which will be the value. So over here we can do db key, and then we can do db value, and then finally we can again call the ctx.json and pass in the response over here. So let me go ahead and stop the application. Actually, first let's save the application. I'll go ahead, stop the application, and then I'm going to rerun it, and then we'll run through each of these endpoints to see how they function and whether we need to make any changes. So we are up and running on port 8080 again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a post request. I'm going to call the add endpoint over here, and then we go to the body, we'll click on raw, and then instead of text we'll put it as a JSON. So we have to build out the JSON object. So we'll put key as name, and then we'll put value as Sri. So now we can go ahead and hit send, and if it's successful, we're going to get saved key name. So now what we can do to ensure that it's been saved, let's change the endpoint to get, and then the method is also going to be get. Let's go ahead and comment out the body, because we are not using that. And over here we'll come to the params, we'll put key is equal to name, and if we send this, we're going to get value for name, which is our key, is 3. So we saw like the add is working and then the get is also working. Now we are going to call our update parameter, update endpoint, and what we're going to do is that's again a post request. If you remember, we'll go to body and then we'll uncomment it, so we have the same request that we sent for the add, but instead of Sri, we'll change it to Srivads. You can change it to whatever you want, but I'm just going to put it as Srivads, and we'll go ahead and hit send. So now you're going to see the message is value for name has been updated from Sri to Srivads. To ensure this works, we'll again call our get endpoint, which will be get name. We can comment out the body because we're not using that, change it to a get request and hit send, and as you can see, it's been updated to Srivads. Now the last thing we want to do is a delete operation, so we'll change it back to post, do a delete. We can remove the question mark key is equal to name because we're passing it from the request body. We'll pass in the key as name, we'll hit send, and it's deleted name. So to validate whether it's working, we'll go back to get, and then we'll do the get question mark is equal to name. And when we do this, we're going to see value for name is blank because we don't have anything for name. And that wraps up this video. I hope you learned something new, how to create a REST API in Go to kind of mimic what a typical CRUD operation would look like using a hash map. So yeah, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Thanks for stopping by, leave a comment if you want to, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye, or peace, forgot what I used to do, whatever. Anyways, catch you all in the next one. Bye.